Saving faith always responds to the commands, the threats, the promises, the joys of life with God. This is the lasting and living faith of Abraham. But notice lastly, before we turn our eyes from the altar, that as soon as Abraham had received this promise anew, he did what? He called on the name of the Lord, but he also made a sacrifice. You see, he knew even then that the promises he was being given were not free and not cheap. That even then he needed blood on the altar so that these promises could be his. And in doing this over and over in his life, and we have no idea how many of these sacrifices he made, but certainly many, somewhere in there, Jesus tells us, he saw the day of Christ, the day of the ultimate sacrifice, that the promises made to him, not just of an earthly city, but ultimately of a heavenly city, whose founder and maker is God himself, that these promises were secured through the ultimate altar, through the offering up of Christ once for all. Brothers and sisters, this is saving faith, a faith that takes to itself a tent, a faith that takes to itself an altar, publicly worshiping God and trusting in his grace through his appointed sacrifice. And this is the faith we are called to as Christians. Martin Luther once described faith this way. He said, "Faith apprehends the things that are not present, and contrary to reason, regards them as being present." Not 1 inch of that land technically belonged to Abraham. And yet by faith, he saw that it already belonged to him and that it already belonged to God. And he set up his altar and he set up his tent in that faith. One of the Puritans, John Trapp, put it this way: it is the nature of faith, saving faith, to believe in God upon his bare word, to take him at his word. It will not be, says sense. It cannot be, says reason. It both can and will be, says faith, for I have a promise for it. These all died in faith, not having the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar. This morning we are reminded of Christ's rule over all the nations of the earth. We see that, brothers and sisters, only by faith. When we look only with the natural eyes, we see a world that seems chaotic and destructive and evil. It seems that the powerful have all the powerful, that the more greedy and more relentless you are, the more you will draw to yourselves. And yet Christ assures us that it will be the meek and the righteous and the faithful who will inherit the earth. These things cannot be received by the eyes of the flesh, but only by faith. As we look at our own lives, I know as I look at mine often in a fleshly way, I see what seems to be a series of coincidences, a series of mishaps, of failures and twists and turns that, if anything, seems often meaningless and purposeless. I see suffering that I can't make sense of, and failures that I don't understand why God allowed. And yet by faith, you can look at your own life and see that all of this was purposed by God before the foundations of the world. Faith takes in all these things. Faith sees truly the nature of the world. Faith sees things that are not present to the eyes, but are true and real. This is the faith of Abraham, how he took the tent and took the altar. May it be our saving faith as well tonight.